if it's not going to matter tomorrow, definitely don't worry about it. Don't spend that energy on it. If it's going to matter next week, maybe it deserves some of your attention. If it's going to matter, longer in the future, then you probably need to be concerned about that, And it just kind of helps me to triage and put things into perspective.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Hustle on Purpose podcast. My name is GT Ikard. We have a very special guest today, Lawrence Hicks. Lawrence, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, thank you so much for being here. I love when I get to talk to you. It's usually for a brief moment, like after church, and I'm wrestling all of my kids. And
that's the greatest moment, though, on my Sunday.
It's so great. I always get excited whenever you're preaching because I don't know, you just have a special way of doing it that I enjoy.
Yes. Well, praise God, that's it all comes from Him. But I just tell people I don't know a whole lot, so I just talk about what I do know and what I relate to. So I guess in some ways it relates to other people. So that's great. Yeah.
I love that. So for people that don't know you, will you tell us a little bit about yourself? Some people are going to infer, I guess, from that brief conversation that you are a pastor.
Yeah. I am the executive pastor and one of the teaching pastors at Mosaic Church right here in Little Rock. And been doing that now for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was on active duty in the United States Air Force. And prior to that, I was born and raised in a little small town down in South Arkansas, El Dorado. So not far from home now, a couple hours away from home. Matter of fact, when I leave here, I'm heading down to El Dorado to go to the farm and visit with some family. But I was raised there, went to school, down at Louisiana Tech. Was trying to figure out how to pay for college and heard about this thing called a ROTC scholarship and ended up applying for it. Got an Air Force ROTC scholarship, which helped to pay my way through school. Was graduated, commissioned into the Air Force in 1992 and spent the next 25 years, even though I really didn't have initial intents of spending that much time on active duty, spent 25 years on active duty on different locations all around the world and retired in 2017. And we moved here to Little Rock and became a part of Mosaic. And it's been a great ride for these last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so much there. So what did you study at La Tech?
Well, I started off as an engineering student and I forgot that I did not like math. So that didn't, that lasted all of less than 1 year, really.
That's a big part of it,
Yep. And so I did the next best thing what a lot of engineering students do when they transition out of engineering, they become history majors. So I became a history and political science major.
Okay.
And I was like, what would I have done if I wasn't going into the Air Force with a history and political science degree? Mm-hmm. But thankfully, Air Force ROTC was still there. So all I needed was a degree to get commissioned, and that fit the bill, basically.
Yeah, you got the diploma, and
exactly.
That's what you needed.
Yeah.
What is, there's quite a bit of work that goes into that ROTC program. So what all does that entail? That scholarship?
Yeah, right.
You got to work for it, right? They don't just give it to you.
Right. It's almost like a part-time job. There's some academic portions to it, but there's also a lot of leadership training that you have to do while you're in ROTC. You have to wear the uniform. So you spend, anywhere from 6 up to 20 hours a week doing just ROTC training and other stuff. So it is like a part-time job. One of my best friends in college played for the football team, and I probably spent more time doing ROTC activities than he spent practicing and playing Division I football.
Yeah.
Just to show you how intense it was. No, he was just a football.
Okay.
Yeah, he just did football.
Yeah.
But yeah, we both spent a lot of time doing those extracurricular activities. But I spent more than he did.
Well, and you made a career out of it. Did he make a career out of football?
He unfortunately he did not.
Yeah.
Yep. He didn't get drafted or anything. But
it's so competitive. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and then 25 years in the Air Force. So you graduate, you're commissioned, so you're an officer.
Correct.
In the Air Force.
Correct.
Where do you go from Louisiana Tech, and you're then in the Air Force?
Yeah, so I was commissioned as a information management officer, which encompassed back during that time some personnel, some administrative type functions. So they sent me all the way to Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas, for my first duty assignment. So I basically left my house in El Dorado, my parents' home, got on Highway 82, drove for 6.5 hours, and I was at my first duty station. Never got off Highway 82. So, so I was like, okay. But the great thing is during that first duty station, I was only there for 1 year, but that's where I met my wife, Liz.
Okay.
She was still a student in college, and we met in May of 1993 and got engaged that same year. And before we left Shepherd that next year, we were married, got married in April of 94. So
wow.
So that was
quick.
Really quick.
When you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't take a long time.
Yeah. So, you said she was in college?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
What college is in Shepherd?
Midwestern State University.
Okay.
Yeah, right there in Wichita Falls. Yeah.
So did she graduate before or after you got married?
After we married. So we got married in March of 94.
Edit that mistake out.
We got married in March of 94. 4 weeks later, I was in Korea for a year. I had orders to go to Korea.
Oh my gosh.
So in April, I was headed off to Korea.
Wow. And
she and our daughter stayed there in Wichita Falls. She finished up school. I got back the following April of 95, and that's when she graduated in May of 95, and then we moved off to our next duty station.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
A year in Korea as a newlywed. How was that?
It was hard. It sucked.
I can't imagine. Yeah. And you had a daughter at this point, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah,
I've got a buddy right
hard.
now that's he's in the Air Force National Guard. That's not right. He's
could be Air National Guard. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he's on just a short deal over in Japan, but he's got a 1-year-old and he's in Japan for a month.
Yeah.
I was just talking to him yesterday. He's like, man, I'm ready to be home.
Yeah.
Like that, that long away, you come back and your little baby's different.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And back then there was no FaceTime.
Yeah.
We didn't even have email. This was
pre-email.
Pre-email, all that stuff. We were writing letters and
getting
sending,
Polaroids
in
an envelope.
Yeah.
Man. Okay, so you finish a year in Korea. You come back. Liz has graduated.
Mm-hmm.
Then where are you?
Yeah. We actually moved here to Little Rock Air Force Base. Yeah.
Okay.
95, we moved to Little Rock Air Force Base.
Yeah.
We ended up spending 4 years here. So we were here from 95 to 99. And our other 2 sons were born during that time. And so we were a family of 3 kids by that time. And it was a good time here. We were close to my family, close to her family, still, newlyweds. So that was a real good time for us.
Is her family in Wichita Falls?
Yes, her. Majority of her family. She's got sisters there.
Yeah.
Aunts, uncles.
Okay.
So, yeah.
We have one family friend that lives in Wichita Falls, and we visited them a couple of times. It's a cool place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it wasn't in August.
Right. It's like it's the first place I've visited where like drought is like a real thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they were like very serious about how much water you can use. And I was like, oh man, just come to Arkansas. We got plenty of it.
Exactly.
Not that far away, and we got all the water you want. But logistically, I guess it's an issue. Okay, so 99, you leave Little Rock?
Yeah, we leave Little Rock. We go to Guam, which is a little island out in the Pacific, of course.
U.S. territory?
U.S. territory on the other side of the date line. So if it's, like today is Wednesday here, it's Thursday already in Guam. So that was a little bit different living on the other side of the date line.
Yeah.
I've actually at times got to experience 2 holidays twice if I depended on, like sometimes I would leave Guam, celebrate a holiday, and have a mission to go to Hawaii and celebrate it all over again. I did that a time or two.
Weird.
But yeah, it was very, very weird. Yeah. So, but Guam was just a little island, 35 miles long, 8 miles wide at the widest point, but it was probably one of the best assignments we ever had. We loved it there.
Yeah. So you and Liz both got to go there and the kids?
Yep. And the kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Our youngest one didn't wear shoes for 2 years. It was just
not a
it's
thing.
just high of 88, low of 78, chance of rain every single day.
It does sound nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Especially in August.
Yes.
Like yesterday was a decent day.
Yesterday was a great day.
Yeah, yesterday was great.
Yeah. That was a typical day in Guam yesterday here in Little Rock. That was every day in Guam.
Too. It sounds nice.
Yeah. First year we were there, I was putting up Christmas lights and I was just dripping sweat. And I was like, this ain't right.
This is wrong.
But I love it.
Right. Yeah. It's something so wrong about it, but it feels so right.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Never been to Guam. You've done a lot more traveling than I have. I was born and raised in Little Rock and have mostly stayed here, besides some small vacations here and there. But I'm not a very cultured person.
Yes, you are.
I got a lot of Arkansas culture.
Yep.
I got a lot of whatever culture is right here.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. So how long were you in Guam? 99 to...
Yeah, 01.
01?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah.
You got Y2K in Guam.
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, we were part of the Y2K DOD task force because we were the first installation, U.S. installation that was going to hit Y2K. So everybody had all eyes on us. And we were like, just to see what was going to happen,
Yeah.
But as we all remember, it was kind of anticlimactic. Nothing really happened.
Yeah.
Planes didn't fall out the sky. Nothing.
Yeah.
Water system still worked. Everything was all fine. Yeah.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. Yeah. Since you were right on that other side of the date line, it's like you got to be part of the new millennium first.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, thankfully, it wasn't that.
Exactly.
It wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
This episode of Hustle on Purpose is brought to you by Arkansas Real Estate Buyers. If you have a problematic piece of real estate, we would love to help you. Go to the description, click on the link, schedule a free consultation with me personally, and we'll get you set up. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, so then 2001, and what are you? What's your job title in Guam? And
yeah, I was the chief of logistics plans for 13th Air Force, which our area responsibility included the Western Pacific. So we basically covered everything from Australia all the way up to the northern part of Asia, including China. So anything to do with war plans, military engagement, any logistics kinds of things. And back then, China was just starting to kind of crop up as a potential near-peer adversary. There were some things that were going on with Taiwan that we were engaged in, specifically planning the defense of Taiwan.
Yeah.
in case China decided they wanted to try to invade and all of those things. So it was a big AOR, and we were
And what is AOR?
area of
interest?
responsibility. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Very big area of responsibility that we had in something like 30 nations or something like that. And we
And
had to
billions of people.
Yeah, billions of people, exactly.
Yeah. Are you jealous of the guy that has that job today?
No.
I wouldn't be either.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
That is a lot. There's a lot going on in that part of the world, with China, what's going on with North Korea now.
Yeah. Taiwan, like you mentioned.
Taiwan still.
Yeah.
And even Hong Kong, there's just the unrest in Hong Kong. And even India now. Back then, India wasn't a big player in the world like they are today. So now economically and militarily, India is a very important part of the world, period. Even if you just look at their population,
Right.
well over
you
a
mix
billion.
the population and their GDP growth.
Right.
Due to us outsourcing a ton of stuff to them. It almost seems like, and I'm talking about some stuff that I'm ignorant about. World politics is not my thing, but it just kind of seems like from the low level perspective that I have, you mix that population with GDP growth, it's like some stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just a recipe for things to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of like the China model, right? Like had a huge population, had a country like us willing to outsource a bunch of work to their less expensive labor.
Right.
And somebody's getting all that money, in the case of China, it's not necessarily the populace.
Right.
Somebody's getting it.
Yeah.
And somebody's doing something with it.
Exactly.
And it's like something's going to happen. I don't know what. It's over my pay grade, but just a recipe for something.
Yep.
I'm not jealous of the person whose job it is.
No, I'm not either. It was fun during that time while we were there. That was pre 9/11, so things were pretty different, and it was more of a peacetime engagement mission versus wartime. So it was military stuff, but it was not with the pressures that we were going to see just a few years later.
Yeah, it's Guam in peacetime.
Yeah.
Christmas lights and 80-degree weather.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
Toes in the sand.
Yeah. Yeah, we're on our way to a good country song.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you leave Guam in 2001, and then where do you go?
Yeah, we head to Utah. So we leave the sun and the sand and head to the mountains and snow
and the
of
Mormons.
Utah. Yeah. Mormon country. We were right north of Salt Lake City at Hill Air Force Base. I was working in the Air Logistics Center there because that's a big depot where they do overhaul of airplanes. We did some fighter aircraft, some heavy aircraft such as C-130 cargo aircraft. We overhauled intercontinental ballistic missiles that carry nuclear warheads. We did the maintenance on those.
Wow.
So it was a pretty varied workload that we had. And we were there, we got there early in 2001. And of course, 9/11 of that year, we all remember what happened. So that was a pretty trying time because we basically had this huge, I don't know how many billions of dollars worth of workload because it was all like F-16 aircraft, some F-15s, different aircraft coming through there for all these upgrades, service life extensions, just general overhaul. And we had to crank up production of those things to get them out to the warfighter. Yeah, because we were going to war, you know. So that was a pretty hectic time that year, starting in September, moving forward. And there were several of us, military folks, who not only worked to generate, get the war machine going there from a industrial base standpoint, but several of us also deployed out of there to go over to the AOR around Afghanistan. So.
Is that what happened for you? You got out of Utah and into.
Yeah, I did not deploy out of Utah, so I did my time there from '01 to '04. They sent me to Air Command and Staff College out of there for a little bit less than a year down in Alabama.
Air Command and
Staff College. Okay. It's basically a course to prepare you for command, to be a squadron commander, or to go do work on a staff such as the Pentagon. So, and it's a master's level course. You earn a master's degree while you're there for that year. They teach you a lot about strategy, military operational strategy, how that interfaces with the objectives of our national command authority, which is the president, secretary of defense, all of our civilian leadership. And so I did that for a year. And then after that, they sent me to Mountain Home, Idaho to be a squadron commander of a logistics unit there in the fighter wing at Mountain Home Air Force Base, Idaho.
I didn't know there was a Mountain Home, Idaho.
Yeah.
I'm used to Mountain Home, Arkansas.
Yeah. There's Mountain Home. It's kind of a misnomer, though. They should call it Desert Home because it's right out in the middle of the desert. You can see the mountains from the base, but it's not. It's not in the mountains. It's down in the Snake River Valley, which is a desert, basically. And
I also don't think of Idaho as having deserts.
Yeah, it does. That's where they grow the potatoes. The Idaho potatoes are grown in the desert part of Idaho because the sand, the soil is so dry and loose, and it's got the right consistency for growing great potatoes along with the warm days, cool nights, and they irrigate it from the Snake River. So that's why, So, yeah. I didn't know that before.
I never knew that.
I didn't know that before I moved there.
But okay.
Yeah. But there in Idaho, that's where I actually deployed out to, by that time we were at war in not only Afghanistan, but Iraq. And I deployed a lot of my unit to both locations. I went to Iraq myself with parts of my unit. Yeah. Yeah.
So what year is that?
This was 2005 by the time I got to Mountain Home. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then what year you land in Iraq? 05?
06.
06.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I get there. Yep. I'm at Mountain Home for roughly a year, and then I deploy out for about half a year.
Are Liz and the kids in Mountain Home?
Liz and the kids are in Mountain Home. Okay. Yep. So I have to leave them once again and deploy to Baghdad.
Yeah. You didn't want to take them to Baghdad?
No, I thought about it, but
so at that point, we've probably got some structure set up in Baghdad.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've been at war there for about 2 years, over 2 years at that point. So there's quite a bit of infrastructure set up. As a matter of fact, we're on the back end of what we would consider the war fighting and doing more of the nation building. Yeah. Where we're trying to suppress the insurgency because there were still, insurgents that were unhappy that we were there doing what we were doing. So we were trying to suppress the insurgency as well as help Iraq to rebuild their infrastructure.
A democracy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Baghdad. It's 06, 07. Mm-hmm. How long you stay there?
Yeah, stay 6 months. Yeah. 6 months? Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm there, yeah.
And then back to Mountain Home?
Yep, then back to Mountain Home.
Okay.
Finish up the next year and a half, 2 years at Mountain Home, leave there in 08, and headed off to the 5-sided puzzle palace, otherwise known as the Pentagon.
The Pentagon, yeah. The 5-sided puzzle palace. I like that way better than the Pentagon. So you had to work at the Pentagon. How was that?
Yeah. Well, I was there for, it was 15, 16 years, but it was compressed into 3. That's how fast paced it was. And that was, it was I don't think I ever had a job that I hated and loved so much at the same time because I was doing budget during that time. My portion that I was working of the Air Force budget, the logistics portion was about $14 billion. So I had this $14 billion portfolio that I had to manage, distribute funds for, talk to Congress, do all these hearings with Congress to try to, advocate for money since Congress writes the checks, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was a pretty tough job. It was early morning to late night. Doing that kind of work. So
I could see what you mean by like loving it and hating it. Cause I mean, that's gotta feel like a heavy burden, a big responsibility.
Yeah, it was, because you're trying to keep your military leadership happy with the priorities that you're setting and where you're spending and sending money. At the same time, you have your congressional caucuses and constituents that you're also have a vested interest in where you're spending money and how you're spending money in their districts. So it was a great learning experience.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see how it would feel like 15 years compressed into 3.
Yeah.
Because when I think of you, I think of confidence. I think of really good communication. And how much of that do you feel like you were born with, and how much of that do you think has come through all of this experience and training that you've had throughout your career?
I would say probably 20% I was born with.
Yeah.
80% just through experience, even from being a little kid and having to do an Easter speech in church to the things that I did in school, whether it was Future Business Leaders of America, 4-H, things like that. And then just like jobs like I was just telling you about at the Pentagon, where you had to be a great communicator and articulate accurately, concisely, and all those things.
It was, and confidently.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
If you're doing a hearing with Congress, I imagine you could get eaten alive in one of those if you're not on it.
Yes, I did.
I mean, yeah, I could.
Yeah. I still remember vividly. I was in a hearing, and the Congress lady from Arizona was asking how we were spending certain money in her district on a certain workload, and I articulated that, which I thought was pretty good, because when I finished, she nodded her head up and down. She says, "Good answer." And she turns back around and she turns back to me again. She says, "But not good enough." And this is like in front of a whole group of my contemporaries, other Congress people, staffers, and everything, and she just basically makes an example out of me and says, "See, this is why we can't get done what we need to do for the American people, because of people like, Lieutenant Colonel Hicks over here who are da-da-da-da-da." I'm like, "Oh my God, this is horrible."
Gosh. Well, and you're just in a whole different realm at that point, because some of that is like, okay, how much of that, what she's saying is true, and how much of what she's saying is because of her own political agenda, needing to be seen, making a strong stance on this, whatever.
Yeah.
It made me think. I had a job interview, and it was a job I really wanted, and it was a corporate job. It was the job I had before I went to work for myself, and it was for a real estate investing company, and they were looking for the first person to be on the ground in their Little Rock office and help them start this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I went through this interview process that involved me doing multiple virtual interviews from Little Rock, going to Memphis, doing some in-person interviews with some people in the office there, flying to Dallas, doing some in-person interviews with people at the office there. While I'm on interview number 15. I'm in Dallas for my second day, and they go, "The owner's in town. He wants to do an interview with you." And so I go to the manager of that Dallas office. We go in his office, and the owner's in there, and he pulls a chair out into the middle of the office and pulls another chair up and asks me to sit there. And I'm just sitting knee to knee with him in the middle of this office. And there's a few other people in the office as well. And he's asked me some very broad, open-ended questions like, what's your family like?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can't give you a 2-sentence answer on what my family's like or whatever. But about the second or third question, and I'm nervous and I'm rambling, I start answering the question. He asked me like, how's your health? Or like something like that. And like, I'm assuming he's trying to see, do I get sick often or
Right.
whatever? And about 2 sentences in, he just goes, stop talking. And I was like, okay. Yeah, like, yes, sir. Like, do I say yes, sir? Do I just say nothing,
Wow,
and like, anyways, it felt like it even just went like south from there. He was just like, if you're going to work at this job, you can't talk that much. You got to get your point across clearer.
Oh my
and like,
goodness.
blah, blah, blah. And I left that interview like, with the guy that runs that office, because felt like we got along well. And I was like, well, it was nice meeting you guys. Like,
Wow.
See you never, I guess. And he was like, oh no, like that went really well. I was like, what are you talking about? He basically told me to shut up like mid-sentence. And he was like, oh no, if he didn't like you, he'd have just kicked you out of the office and put you on a flight back to Little Rock. And I was just like, that was liking me.
Wow.
And like, I ended up having to go back to Memphis, and the owner was there. He brings me into a conference room with like 16 people at this massive conference table. There's one open seat next to him. He's at the head, obviously. Brings me in and sits me down, and he just goes, well, GT, you're not my pick for the job. And I was like, why'd you make me drive to Memphis just to tell me I didn't get the job? You know what I mean? And he ends up being like, but I've got to listen to some of the people around the table, and they think you'll do all right. So the job's yours if you want it. And I was just like, geez, like, I guess I'll take it.
Wow.
And that's nowhere near being in a situation like you were, where a senator is just like, good answer, but it's not good enough. It's just a small like way that I can relate to that. I just felt like, what am I even doing here?
Yeah.
Where's the nearest exit?
Yeah.
Can I leave?
Yeah.
I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. I don't want to be here. Yep.
I just want to be anywhere else but here. But you survived it. You got through it.
Yep. Survived DC.
Yeah.
Survived rush hour and all of that. And
Man.
And after that, we went off to another overseas assignment in Turkey, which was
Oh wow. Yeah.
We were in Turkey for 2 years. That was a great assignment.
Yeah.
We absolutely loved it. And
I don't know enough about Turkey.
Turkey is a lot of people think of Turkey as being Middle Eastern. It is connected to the Middle East. The people, some of the culture is similar to the Middle East, but Turkey is probably more European than it is Middle Eastern or Asian. And it sits right at that crossroads, the juncture of Asia and Europe. And actually, the Turks historically have probably influenced Europe more than Europe has influenced Turkey and the Middle East, just because of the Ottoman Empire prior to Turkey was very influential in a lot of ways throughout the continent.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing place to be, because it's definitely a mixture of the modern and the ancient being in Turkey.
Yeah.
It was nothing to be going down the road where we lived, and you got a Mercedes coming around you on your left on the freeway, and then right over in the median or over off to the side, you got to have a guy herding his sheep down the side of the road, or somebody with a donkey pulling a cart,
Yeah.
So it was kind of that cool mix of the ancient meets modern.
Right.
Yeah.
And good coffee. I've heard
Great
of Turkish coffee.
Turkish coffee.
Strong coffee.
Very strong.
Yeah.
Do not drink it after dark.
Yeah.
Or you will be up all night. Yeah. Yeah. But great coffee, great cuisine.
Yeah.
The people are fantastic there. The nicest people we have met in the world by far. Yeah. They took such good care of us. We just loved it.
Yeah.
We just loved it.
It sounds so cool. And yeah, and I guess I hadn't thought about it being at kind of the crossroads of like a lot of those cultures mixing. Is Turkey, what's the prominent religion in Turkey?
It's 90. It is Islam is the predominant religion.
Okay.
Yeah. They're 90 something
That's what I
percent.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're and again, having been to several countries in that part of the world where Islam is the predominant religion, Turkey probably has a more moderate form of Islam that they follow.
Not extremist.
No, not in the least bit.
Yeah. Well, just because I feel like I have to ask, how does it work being a Christian African-American man, U.S. man in Turkey?
That was the interesting part. It was actually a very, very good experience.
Really?
Because even when I was in Iraq and even in parts of Afghanistan, the Muslims that I met have a deep respect for Christians. They consider us believers, followers of children of Abraham. So in their words, they say we respect you because you believe, you believe in God. So there's just a mutual respect there between the Christians and the followers of Islam. It doesn't always come across on TV like that, but in my personal interactions, they were very respectful of our belief in Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great to hear, because all you hear is the headlines about the bad stuff, right?
Right.
But those headlines leave out billions of people.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, good. I'm glad it wasn't a bad experience.
No, not at all.
It almost is like, because I'm born and raised in Arkansas and in the South, and it seems to be all that we talk about, and football season's rapidly approaching. I'm just imagining it like when you were saying like Turkey was a pleasant experience, for some reason it was making me think of like when I visited like Ole Miss Stadium, like the fans are great and the people have they have a deep appreciation of like their football team's been bad before, just like the Razorbacks are, and we can commiserate together. And then I go to LSU, it's a little bit more hostile over there, and they've got a lot of championships and they hold them over our head. And that's like that's the closest I can relate to traveling to a country like Iraq or Turkey is like, oh, it sounds like Ole Miss is kind of like Turkey and LSU is kind of like Baghdad.
Yeah, that's probably a good comparison.
That
Americans can relate to. Yeah.
I just relate all of my world politics to the SEC.
Right. There you go.
You got to bring it, dumb it down a little bit for me.
Gotcha.
Okay, so how long you and Liz and the kids were in Turkey?
Yes. By that time, our two oldest kids were in college, so they were still here in the States, and our youngest was with us. He was, around 8th grade or so. I think
so he got to go to school in Turkey.
Yeah, he got to go to school there. Yeah,
that's cool.
And so yeah, but it was a good experience for us. Like I said, yeah.
Good. So where do you go from Turkey?
Yeah, we leave Turkey, go to South Carolina for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where in South Carolina?
We were at Shaw Air Force Base. We lived in Columbia, which is the capital. But Shaw was, 45 minutes to the east of Columbia, roughly.
Yeah.
So I would commute out there every day. And I was working for the 3-star general, who was the commander of Air Force Central Command, which oversees all of the Middle East, the Horn of Africa, and everything that was kind of going on in that part of the world.
A lot.
Yeah. There was a lot going on at that point in time because
That's
Syria,
a big area.
because at that point Syria was was devolving into chaos, and that was kind of the focus of what we were doing, was trying to withdraw from Iraq responsibly at the same time, not leaving Syria unattended. So that was kind of a tough balance. Had to stand up a few new bases in different places over there, operational bases, so that we could support what was going on in Syria. So it was an interesting year. It was only a year, and I was going back and forth from South Carolina over to that part of the world quite a bit to do just to do visits, to do coordination with the host nations,
right,
and all of that. So I was on the road quite a bit during that time.
Yeah, in the back of a cargo plane all the way to Syria. Or are you flying like?
Yeah, we would fly
commercial.
Sometimes we would go on I think we did a flight or two in a cargo plane, C-17, but most of the time we would fly commercial to a major hub, whether it was Doha, Qatar, or somewhere in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and then we would transfer over to a cargo plane or military airlift.
Going over the entire Atlantic in the back of a C-130 doesn't sound fun.
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
I guess you have more room.
Yeah. If you prepare for it, you're fine because you just roll out your mat, your air mattress, and get, place yourself between the wheels of a Humvee or whatever they're transporting and go to sleep. In some ways it's more comfortable than being in a, commercial airliner.
Yeah, I guess now that I think about it, it's like, there are some benefits.
Yeah, plenty of leg room.
Yeah, there's no fasten your seatbelt sign. No stewardess saying, "Sir, will you please sit back in your seat?"
No, they just gears up, gears down. Strap in. Yeah,
yeah, it's funny. Okay, so all right. Well, then you leave South Carolina. Where do you go?
Yeah.
We might as well just finish out this rabbit
go to Germany.
hole.
Go to Germany for 2 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Liz is with you again in Germany?
Liz and our youngest son is with us again. And we were at Ramstein, Germany. I was a commander of the 86th Logistics Readiness Group, where we supported, did logistics support for all of the air operations at Ramstein.
Which is a lot, right?
Which is a big base. Yep, it's a big base. It's a hub for everything that goes on in Europe.
Yeah.
But I not only had units there on Ramstein, but I had units in Luxembourg, in Portugal, in Spain. I had an operating location down in Turkey and Syria, right on the border. So I had people spread out. I had people in Poland because we were doing operations with the Polish at that time to counter the Russian aggression that was going on. Russia, and Crimea was going on, and we were trying
Poland's
to keep
an important buffer
exactly
between Russia and a lot of other places.
Yeah. So we had people. There were 1,200 people in my unit that I worked with. I was in command of, spread out all over the place. Some were even down in Africa, down in the sub-Saharan doing operations.
1,200 people.
Yeah.
So how, just the logistics of leading 1,200 people, how does that work? There's obviously a chain of command, but like, how many leaders do you have under you that, like, how does that division of leadership work?
Yeah, it was, of course I have an immediate staff around me, my deputy commander, my senior enlisted advisor, and about 20 immediate staff that worked in and around my office. And then I had 4 squadron commanders who were lieutenant colonels. I was a colonel by this time. Had 4 lieutenant colonels that each commanded units, and they had the majority of the troops under them. So they did most of the heavy lifting when it came to like leading people and doing the actual operations,
Right.
So I was like a commander of commanders.
Right. If something gets to your desk, it's a big problem.
Yes. Yeah.
It's gone.
It's either really good or it's really bad. Yeah. So they handle most of the personnel and people issues. I would, of course, would have to kind of set the tone, policy,
Right.
things like that. And I still had to go out, and check on people and do what we call battlefield circulation, and go out and just check on the morale
seen
and
and-
welfare of folks and
Right.
and things like that. Because ultimately, even though they're commanders too, it's all still the responsibility of the overarching commander. So,
When they're people,
yeah, right.
like there's no shortcut to connecting with people.
Correct.
And it's easy, even as a leader of far less than 1,200 people, even 4 people, it's like it's
Right.
easy to lose that connection with the fact that they're people. They have lives.
Right.
They have a lot going on in
Yeah.
their world, and you can't know about all of it, but it's important to make that face-to-face connection with
Yeah. You're
some of
exactly
them.
right. Exactly right.
What did you call it? Battlefield circulation?
Yeah, that's what we called it.
Yeah.
Because, and that's probably a term, a holdover from like World War II, when you
Yeah.
would see General Patton, in a Jeep with his driver going out on the battlefield to see how things were going. He was
Yeah.
circulating around the battlefield. So,
Yeah.
so we just kind of, that term I still use to articulate, hey, I'm going to check on the troops,
Yeah.
see what they're doing on the battlefield,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you get a much better feel from at a certain level, like, and certainly when you're leading 1,200 people, it has gotten to this point where it's like this weird game of telephone where it's like the base level troops who are dealing with certain issues and their front lines dealing with whatever they're feeling goes through so many filters
Right.
before it gets to you
Yep.
that it's like you have to have some face-to-face with them just to get a real sense of like what's going on,
Exactly.
because stuff gets so diluted by the
Yeah.
time it gets to you.
Yeah. And they would be very open and honest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do at Ramstein, because we were a 24/7 operation there, one of my favorite things to do would be to go out on the flight line after midnight, because there's still planes landing, launching, being refueled, repaired. But the thing that would amaze me is it would all be these young 22, 23-year-old kids out there that are just running the entire airfield. The rest of the leadership on the base is asleep, and you got all these basically kids, that are out there making things happen that, and that's what we train them to do. But to me, it was just so amazing, so I'd love to go out there at night and just do some ride alongs with kids that were doing refueling, or maybe they're getting expediting a part out to a C-17 that's got some type of issue that the maintainers are trying to fix, and sometimes it was like, oh, the colonel's here. I'm like, no, I'm here, but I just want to hang out with you for a little bit, see how
At
you're doing
ease,
your
soldier.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah, at ease. Just keep doing your job, and I just want to see how things are going. And that was one of my favorite things to do. Get to meet the airmen, get to learn about what they were doing. And again, they would be very open and honest during that time about what was going right, what was going wrong. So learned a lot.
Well, it's amazing people can shock you one way or the other with the responsibility that they're given, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people just amaze you that you're able to actually turn something over to somebody and you're like, oh, like these 23-year-old kids did handle this, and it's not all
right
going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak,
Yep.
You can also get surprised the other way, but
Yeah.
that's really cool that you would do that. And I'm sure it meant a ton to those people. And also you find out, you just get to hear not only what they're going through on their day to day, but like what their dreams and aspirations and goals, and like, you can have this 23-year-old kid that's doing, running a part somewhere. It's probably not what he set out to be doing. He's got, he signed up for the military, got in the Air Force, and that happened to be what he was doing at the time. But he's got
Exactly.
he's got a backstory. He's got a dream. He's got
Exactly.
she, he,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you would take the time
Yeah.
to do that. And like I said, I know it had to mean a lot to those people.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're in Ramstein. We're, leading 1,200 people. Where do we go from there?
From Ramstein, I get sent to a joint job, and a joint job is just basically a job that is where the unit is composed of all different services. It's not one specific service. So I went to Defense Logistics Agency in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Worked for a 1-star there, and I was the Director of Clothing and Textiles for the entire Department of Defense. And you're like, clothing and textiles, what does that mean?
A lot of clothing and textiles.
Well, every uniform, every helmet, every boot, every piece of battlefield protective equipment, we designed it, sourced it, bought it. And when the time came, at the end of service life, we disposed of those items also. So we had the entire supply chain. It was about $5 billion a year that we would spend each year to procure new uniform items, design items, and things like that. And then when I first heard of them, like clothing and textiles, it was kind of like, I'm a war fighter. I'm supposed to be like,
right.
But, it's one of the basic things that you got to have,
have clothes.
As uniform, especially the protective items, the flak vests, the helmets, gloves.
You still get like a group discount on any of that stuff? You hold
no,
over
not
any
a group
favors?
discount, no.
Any phone calls you could?
I could phone in a favor maybe. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I just need a couple things.
A couple things. Okay, let me know what you need. Yeah.
I have a little doomsday prepper in me. Not full blown, and you can't even really talk about it without people thinking you're crazy.
Okay. Well, yeah.
But you never know.
You never know.
So
I have to see what I got in my personal stash that may be of use to you.
I love that kind of stuff, but it's $5 billion is an incredible amount of money, but I'm surprised it's not more, because it
is more overall, because we bought items for a lot of the services, and then there were some items that are common across the services. We would procure those, and then there are some items that the services just buy themselves. So there's probably another $5 to $10 billion out there that we weren't the buying agent for.
I gotcha.
Or the authority for, but we did have a pretty big chunk of it, and so one of the most interesting things about that job was you got to see everything from the cotton bale to the making of fabric, to the dyeing of the fabric, to the actual textiles, the cut and sew operation of putting things together. It's pretty, and you really get to see how fragile our industrial base is.
Gosh, yeah.
Because you'd be hard pressed to pull a tag out of any of your clothes and it says made in the USA. But everything that we put on a U.S. service member by law has to be made in the USA. From the cotton has to be sourced here, the nylon, whatever the material is, it has to be an American product. So that made things very challenging in that aspect.
Yeah, I could see, but I do love that though, because it's like, how many people does that $5 billion budget, how many businesses does that keep here, and like employees kept here?
It keeps a lot of them.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about that, because it's not like you can just go, I imagine there's a lot of companies vying for that business and proposing how they can, budgets for how to do the uniforms. And
not as many as we would like though, because it's just the American industrial base when it comes to things like that are very,
they can handle that volume.
They get yeah, they could handle that volume. There's not a lot of expertise in those areas anymore. There's, because like the Carolinas used to do a lot of textiles, when we made used to make a lot of clothing in the U.S. and we just don't do that anymore. A lot of it's outsourced now to other countries. So it's hard to keep that base going with only a military customer. It's very, very tough. We could have some folks like you, the doomsday preppers, they could really...
Don't just go labeling me a doomsday prepper now. I said I have a little bit.
Is that what you said?
I said I have a little bit of doomsday prepper.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I think once I started having kids and stuff, it's like the weight of like being the caretaker and the provider of my family just made me start thinking of, and even like you talking about how fragile our like supply chain and the industrial side of things is. It's like I've allowed us to become so reliant on being able to go to the grocery store and just like get whatever we want food wise. And so like, I mean, COVID kind of helped me realize just how fragile some of that stuff is.
Exactly.
And so I started doing things like I store a bunch of food and, because I'm under no delusions that I'm like even though I have a beard and a truck, like I don't want to go like hunt and gather to provide for my family if I can avoid it.
Right.
So, we have a bunch of food and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's the right thing to do.
So it's like when I say I have a little doomsday prepper in me, it's like, it's more of just, it's worth the money to me right now to just have a bit of a
peace of mind
contingency plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll, we can talk about the other doomsday prepper stuff off camera.
Right.
I don't want the ATF after me because it's something I said on a podcast.
Oh man.
Okay. So yeah, like head of textiles and fabrics. I imagine that's a whole new learning curve of things to learn there.
It was. I was only there for a year, but I learned so very much in that job. And I still keep in touch with a lot of my coworkers, folks that I work with there, because I've made some really, really good friendships. Philly's a great town. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess for my family, that was when I decided to retire. That was 2017.
Okay.
I was hitting 25 years in service, and I just kind of woke up one morning and was like, I think I'm going to retire. So Liz and our youngest son were still in Germany. Liz, they stayed in Germany.
Because he was in school?
Yeah, he was in school, so he was finishing up his senior year.
Okay.
So we decided for them to stay there. And Liz was working for the Air Force as a civilian. And I just one day decided, all right, I think I'm going to do this. Talked to Liz. I talked to my boss. They were both supportive, and I punched a button and early in 2017. And no, it wasn't early. It was like June when I decided it. And by October, I was done. October 2017 was when my last day of working on active duty, and we moved here to Little Rock.
So why Little Rock?
Because I had told Liz, I said, I am retiring. I would go anywhere you want to go, anywhere you want to work, And she's a government civilian. And actually, the Air Force was going to send her. We had an assignment for her in Virginia. We were supposed to be going to the Virginia Beach area.
Okay.
And then the Small Business Administration came online and said, hey, we've got a new position in Little Rock we want to interview you for. So they interviewed her, and she said, well, I've already got this other job, so if you want to hire me, you got to do it quick and, make an offer. They made an offer, and she was like, I think we should go to Little Rock. And I was like, okay. Really didn't have any... Yeah, I had already picked out a house on the beach in Virginia, but I was like, okay, let's go to Little Rock. And
when you'd been here, and it's close to home.
Yeah, it's close to home, close to the kids and everything. And actually, it was all God's hand just kind of moving us around. And So it's been a great job for Liz, since we moved here in 2017. She's working with the Small Business Administration.
Okay.
And
I need to call her. I need some of that SBA money.
Oh yeah. She can link you up. She'll hook you up
Nice.
with some folks down there.
Yeah.
Her coworkers, they do great, and they've done, especially during the pandemic and afterwards, they've done some amazing work there.
I mean,
the SBA. Yeah.
I know they had to be slammed.
Yeah, they were, and but they have the job's been great for her.
Yeah.
We prayed before we got here and said, God, we want to please send us to a good church. We don't want to be church shopping a long time. Mosaic was the first church that we actually stepped foot into.
And how did that happen?
Here. It happened because we were staying in a rental house down on the corner of Roosevelt Road and South Summit, kind of on the edge of the Quapaw area. I don't think that's Quapaw proper, but they kind of consider it the historic area.
Yeah.
And we were staying in a Airbnb there. And one day Liz was out walking our dog and talking to one of the neighbors, and she was just asking her about church, and this lady was telling her where she went to church at, and she said, and I've heard about this church called Mosaic that's down the road here that I understand is a pretty good church. I haven't been there, but you may want to check it out. And so that Sunday, Liz went. I think I was still in Philly at the time.
Yeah.
And she called me. She went to the first service, and she called me when she got out of the first service, and she was literally in the parking lot, sitting in the car crying. And I was like, what's wrong? She was like, nothing. I just went to this church called Mosaic, and it was the most wonderful thing.
Yeah.
She said it was all kinds of people.
Yeah.
She says, I've never been in a place like this before. She said, I'm sitting here now watching people coming and going, and there's all these families with all these the kids don't look like the parents don't look like the kids.
Yeah.
And there's old people, there's young people, there's people who are in wheelchairs, people who are on crutches. And she said, it's just so many different people that are here. It just looks like a whole collage of our entire military career right here in this church. She said, and she was just in tears, weeping because of the beauty of it. She says, this is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And
I never heard that story. That's so good.
Yeah. And that's
who preached.
That's how we.
Does she remember?
I'll have to ask her. I don't know who preached that Sunday. Yeah. And I do remember the first Sunday I actually got a chance to come to Mosaic. It was similar experience.
Yeah.
Mark DeMaz was preaching, and at the end of his message, he was like, if you want to go on this journey with us called Mosaic, just come on up here right after the service and connect with me, and we'll get you connected. And, you never really hear senior pastors say, come talk to me.
Right.
And having been in ministry, I would know how busy pastors are. So I was like, I'm not going to bother him. And Liz was like, let's go up and talk to him. He said to come up and talk to him. And I was like, oh, okay. So we went up and we go and meet him. And Liz was like, this is my husband, Lawrence. I'm like, hi, how you doing? And I happened to have these business cards I had made up since I had retired. And so I just handed Mark one of mine. I said, I know you don't have much time, but here's my card. And he looks down at the card, and he looks over at Harry, and he pulls Harry Lee, our senior pastor, like, Harry, this guy's a retired colonel. We need him. Get him. I mean, just like right there.
I can see it. Yeah.
And so Harry, later, a few weeks later, Harry and I, we link up, and I just started doing some volunteer work at the church and stuff. And because I had a lot of free time at that point, wasn't working or anything.
Yeah.
And Harry and I just developed a great relationship, friendship.
He's so great.
Yeah, he is. He is. Harry's amazing. Mark's
Him and
amazing.
Mark are they're like a good cop, bad cop. Not that either one of them is a bad cop, but like they're just a great team. Yeah. Different.
Right.
It's like Mark is very like in your face. Yeah. Harry's very like.
Yeah, he's so kind, gentle, and he's the people person.
Yeah. Harry's like if Prozac was a person. You know what I mean? It's like if I ever need to just like calm down,
Right.
I just go talk to Harry.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
Yeah,
feel better.
that's true. There are some days when I'm kind of ticked off or heated about something. And by the time I finish talking to Harry, I'm like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mark ropes you in, Mark hooks you, Harry, gets you in there. You start doing some volunteer stuff for the church.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history.
Yeah. It's 5 or 6 year old history, but it's history.
Yeah.
Because we I think I got here in October or so of 2017. Kind of started volunteering about that time, and things just kind of started falling into place. Where by July of 2018, Harry came to me and said, "Hey, me and the elder board want to offer you a part-time position, here." And I was like, "Okay, all right." He's like, "Do you want to see the job description?" I was like, "Is it what I've been doing or is it different?" He was like, "Well, it's pretty much what you've been doing and volunteering here." He said, "We'd like for you to potentially become one of our teaching pastors also, and I was like, "Well, let me at least give you my so I know you know my military resume, but let me give you some of my actual credentials for ministry also." And so I passed that over to him, but I think we had worked for so long together by then. He was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll show this to the elder board. They'll be happy.
They'll appreciate it." Yeah.
Yeah, but I had no idea, that God was positioning us to be here and for me to kind of move into becoming a volunteer to part-time to now pretty much, full-time executive pastor.
Yeah.
Some 5-6 years later.
Right. Well, and being there for the pandemic and helping the church get through that.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to ask is like, do you feel like your military background really helped with your experience these last 5-6 years at the church?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because when I came on the staff, one of the things that the elder board had set as a priority was organizational excellence. They were like, "Okay, we've been a church now for, 15, 16 years now. We need to, kind of move forward with organizational excellence." So I felt like I could help with that and did the best I could to kind of help with that, with the staff, with the church overall.
Different constraints than the military.
Right. And we have come a long way in the last 5 or 6 years as far as organizational excellence. The staff is very stable now, very healthy. We've had some fantastic hires that we've made, everybody from Lauren Carry-On, who's our amazing children's pastor, to even, Candace Rice, who's their assistant there in children's, and Kelsey Ortiz, who's
shout out to Kelsey.
What's that?
Shout out to
Kelsey. Yeah. She's doing amazing things there. Yeah. And these are all hires that we've done in the past few years that have contributed to that organizational excellence, because it's just great people, great heart, great work ethic. They love people, they love God, and they are just knocking it out the park.
Yeah. Well, and the organizational excellence helps you keep the right people, right?
Exactly.
Because it's like you'll have bad people leave.
Exactly.
You'll have good people leave just because the organization isn't functioning properly.
Exactly. You want to try to minimize, because it's so hard in the work sector now to hire good people. And you have to work hard. Once you do hire good people, you got to work hard to retain them. So we put a lot of work into that. We've done a lot of updates to our personnel policies where we didn't have good policies. We formulated policies so that we could, not only operate like a church and a ministry, but operate as a good employer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That stuff is, I have no doubt that your experience has been invaluable in that stuff, because it's one of those things. I'm like Mark in a lot of ways, in the sense of I would like to think I'm pretty decent at like coming up with an idea and like taking action on that idea. But getting into the weeds of like the details of the organizational excellence is like not my thing.
Right.
I'm like, this is a great idea and we can make it function to like help the community or like make money or, you know, whatever like the goal is. But like the operational excellence, it's not my thing. And I'm not saying Mark is that way. I was saying I'm more like Mark on like the
Mark is he's definitely the visionary, and the way we like to think of ourselves as a triad, you know, between the founding pastor, directional leader who's Mark, senior pastor Harry, executive pastor me. You know, I deal with form and function of things just to keep things running well, whether it's from a infrastructure standpoint, personnel standpoint. It's all about how is this working? How do we keep it working well? Harry is more geared towards people and people problems. You know, he's the senior pastor. He's got that pastor's heart. So, and we've had to deal with a lot of, you know, whether it's our own members or staff, you know, there's always, people, there's always problems. So Harry helps us to navigate those very, very well. And Mark, he is more about the feel of things, how things look and feel, you know. So whether it's we're planning a new sermon series, he'll be like, I feel like we need to do, you know, he just has this kind of ingrained in him, and every visionary does, like yourself. I know how things should look. I know how it should feel. I may not know how to sustain it once it gets up and running, but I know what it should look and feel like. And he does that on a number of fronts, you know, so whether it's from a ministry standpoint, whether it's, as you see now, we're about to roll out the table small groups that came out of his brain. And whether, you know, how the building looks, you know, I'm concerned about the way it works, you know, or the toilet's flushing, you know. Mark is concerned about how the toilet looks, you know. You know, so, but between the three of us, you know, it's
three-legged stool.
It's a three-legged stool.
You need all three legs. Or it's
going to fall over.
It's not going to work well like a stool anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, just a takeaway for anybody that's listening that maybe runs a small business. You know, sometimes as the owner of a small business, you're all three legs. And very few people are gifted at being all three. You know, one of the struggles that I see, and I've seen it in myself, is everyone is probably geared towards one of the three, and it tends to be what you focus on and what's important to you. And it's what like recharges your batteries to think about. It's hard to do all three. And what I found out is that where you're weakest at is going to be your biggest limiting factor. So even though you're strong in an area, overall, you and your organization are going to go no higher than your weakest point, you know. So if you're great at form and function, but horrible at look and feel, you know, that's going to be your limiting factor, and it's going to limit you overall, because no matter how good you are in one of those areas, it's not going to override the shortcomings in the others. So that's why it's great to have, even as a small, and I'm, you know, I help run our family farm, but I don't, you know, run a business where I'm counting on bottom line necessarily to pay people and to all of that. But it's a challenge, I imagine, as a small business owner, to get people around you. I don't know if you have to contract them to fill in those other areas, or do like you do with a small group, business leaders, small group, and gather other like-minded business people around you to help pour into you, to help you, you know, prop up those other two areas. But that's a huge challenge. What I just encourage people to do is take action and get creative. So like you just mentioned, for those of you that don't know, like it's been 2.5 years ago, I started that business leaders. It's a small group basically Mosaic gave me a great canvas to do that on, right? Because like when you're through Mosaic Church, you already Mosaic, and I've talked to Mark about this several times, has done an incredible job of creating a facility that that allows for tough conversations to happen that are really difficult to do outside of it.
Right.
But no matter what church you go to or what groups you're affiliated with, entrepreneurship, leadership can be a really lonely thing. And like, I think I was hard on myself for a long time about that because it just, I don't know, it sounded weak to be like lonely or whatever. I have a lot of people in my life that care deeply about me and that will gladly listen to me talk about issues that I'm going through, but very few of them can give me actionable advice through the lens of actually being a business owner, being a Christian, being a father or just a parent. My friends that I had around me were friends through proximity and similar age, right? Like we went to school together, we worked together or whatever. But they couldn't help me. They couldn't support me in the sense of somebody that had been through dealing with these payroll issues or overhead issues, right, or, the stresses of owning a business and leading employees and stuff like that. So, through talking to Paul Kroger and Alex Diaz, they helped me with, I think there's probably a need for other people in a similar boat. Yeah. And we were able to create that group where it's business leaders, that it's not a networking event trying to pitch things to each other, right? But a networking event in the sense of we're people that have issues facing ourselves and our business. And we want to get together and talk about those things together and try to help each other through that lens of it's a small group, but it's also a season of life and a common cause. Right. Because even though all of us are like different ages, cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, we can meet together based off those core things we have in common. It's like followers of Jesus Christ, owners or leaders of business. And like the rest of it just becomes secondary. Right. But we can help each other no matter our age, race, gender. Right. Yep. And it's been amazing.
I know I just started attending the same group, and it's been such a huge help for me and my family on the farming side, because we've been, just learning from you guys, how to incorporate, how to do, we are much further along on the business side than we have ever been. Great. With our family farm,
And y'all went through some of that estate planning stuff as well?
Yeah, did estate planning with Pinnacle Legacy. Yeah. That was...
I don't know if you saw this. So Stan Miller is that guy's name.
Right.
Did you see, I had forgotten to bring this up, but Tyler Turchie sent it to me. He was in like Ukraine delivering like a fleet of like cars.
What?
Yeah, Tyler Turkey sent me this article, and I'll have to look it up and send it to you because, it was like small town Arkansas estate planning attorney delivers like fleet of cars to Ukrainian soldiers.
Wow.
I was like, what? It was like national news.
Wow.
And like there he is in front of like a fleet of cars, like in Ukraine, like hand delivering them. Like
that is...
I was like,
that's amazing.
He was just talking at our business meeting a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But anyways, so, that's an example of like, I'll talk on here all the time of like, actions you can take that are low risk, educational, foundational. It's like something like that group. I still to this day feel, very unequipped to be the leader of that group. I consider myself more of a facilitator of the group. I buy the lunch and Mosaic provides the space, and I'll try to have some stuff for us to talk about, but it's really just kind of trying to facilitate that conversation, bring speakers and
right.
It's stuff like that I try to do that I know it's beneficial for me, and hopefully it's beneficial for other people. Cost me very little, a little bit of my time, a little bit of money, but it's been excellent.
Well, maybe we need to get you to teach a short course on facilitating, because some folks they're afraid to take on something like a small group or something like that, because they think they have to know it all, do it all those things, when really there's an art to facilitating whereby you don't have to know it all or do it all.
Yeah.
You just kind of set the environment, and good things happen out of that environment, just like they're happening in that group. So,
one, it allows me to not feel the pressure on myself of having to have the answers,
right,
and having to have a large presentation planned. I don't have to put myself in a position of like authority,
right?
Because I don't want to, because there are people in that group that know way more than, some of those people in that group have forgotten more about business than I'll probably ever know.
That's true.
Right. But by just having the meeting, making it an easy thing for them to come to, they can show up and they'll drop nuggets of wisdom that are extremely helpful to me.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be there if they had to lead it.
Right.
But because I can just have a room available, have lunch, have some things, and just send them a calendar invite, it's like a mentor-mentee relationship. It's like the pressure is more on the mentee than the mentor. And I think a lot of people get that backwards. Like, as somebody that wants to be mentored to, you have to do the work.
Right.
You're getting the value out of it. You have to provide a lot of value in return.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think people want to be a mentee without providing any value to the mentor.
That's
or
true.
They're like, how do I do that? And it's like, have you ever bought lunch before? Can you buy lunch for somebody other than yourself?
Yeah.
Can you find a room? Do you have an email?
Yeah.
It's not
right.
It's not rocket science.
Right.
But it does take some action.
Yep.
And I think people just get stuck on that hurdle.
Yeah.
And they're worried people are going to say no. It's like, people say no all the time. We've had meetings where 4 people show up.
Exactly.
And some of those are the best meetings. We have a really small group.
Right.
And it gets really intimate and people share more. Some of the best stuff comes out of the smaller meetings.
Yeah. Can't let that discourage you.
Yeah. I mean, even like this podcast. Like, this podcast is me just trying to be a facilitator. We have people on, people like that are gracious enough to come on and let me dig into your history a bit and have you share all of that. And it's me just trying to get some stuff out of you because it helps me become better, hearing your experience and how you've dealt with stuff. And hopefully it provides value and entertainment to the people that watch. And it's just trying to facilitate other people's knowledge and growth. And through being a conduit for some of that, I get to pick up a lot of stuff along the way.
Right.
And the more I do of that, the more I find joy and purpose in it.
Yeah. This is why this is one of the fastest growing channels on YouTube.
Yeah. To the moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Subscribe now so you can say I was there when it started.
That's right.
Yeah. I just think your story is so interesting because I come from born and raised in Little Rock and not spent much time out of here. I spent a couple years all the way up in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But that's the furthest I've been from home for a long period of time. It is. It's a good 2.5, 3 hour drive.
Yeah.
But so what do you see on the horizon? Is it staying at Mosaic until forever?
Yeah,
You're not allowed to leave. So,
well, I'm wherever, we're always wherever God wants us to be.
yeah.
And, we don't feel like he's saying, hey, you need to be getting ready to move in, a
Good.
year, 2 years or whatever, not hearing that
Yeah.
at this point. But our desire, me and Liz, we do, we love living in Little Rock. We definitely love Mosaic, working and walking, worshiping at Mosaic. We definitely enjoy it. We love being close to family. So this is it's a great situation for us,
Yeah.
On the horizon, probably my biggest priority over the next, I don't know, for the next while is going to be just being a great grandpa. So
It's so exciting.
Our grandson is 6 months old. So
6 months old already, man.
Oh, yeah,
I feel like it was yesterday.
Yeah, he's 6 months old, soon to be 7. So that is your life changes when you have kids. It definitely changes when you have grandkids. Because
I believe that.
There's you start thinking about things that you hadn't even thought about before. You're like, man, do I need to move to be closer to my grandkids? So I need to do this or that, or let me change my my will and my estate plan. I got to leave something for the grandson, and things like that. So that's a big priority, and he'll, and hopefully we have other grandkids, but right now he's our only one, and hopefully he'll, what we do now, kind of we think about him. We have him in mind when we make decisions a lot now.
Yeah, it's like, man, all that stuff I was planning on leaving to the kids, it's just going to bypass them and go straight to the grandbabies.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't need this, but
That's
my grandbaby
awesome.
does. Yeah.
And so I want to talk a little bit about the ranch, because I think that's super cool and a unique thing. Okay. So you run you and your family run a cattle operation out of El Dorado.
Yeah.
And that's some family land that was passed down. You shared in a sermon recently kind of the story behind that, and I think it's incredible. So it was your great-grandmother?
Yeah, my great-grandmother.
Great-grandmother.
Yeah.
She was hurt in a gas company related fire accident.
That's correct. The it was 19. I'll reiterate. So I know you've heard this, but some folks haven't. It was her name's Nora Oliver, my great grandmother. So she was my my dad's mother. Okay. They had moved from out of the country to uptown El Dorado, gotten all the utilities hooked up, so they were living good, had lights and water and gas, and they had never had any of these things before. Back then, she was cooking on a wood stove, on the back side of the house and drawing water up from a well.
Bath water on a fire.
Exactly. So unfortunately, the gas company hooked up the gas. They didn't put a regulator on, or something was wrong with the valve and piping and all that. And she went in to cook dinner one evening and struck a match and basically, just blew up, burned her up.
It's probably back before they even added the, whatever they put in there to make it smell. Because natural gas has no odor. They add that in there so it has that identifiable scent.
Exactly. It could have been. It could have been part of the issue.
Yeah,
definitely. And so she basically the way the documents read that we've been able to pull is like they just hooked up a high pressure line directly to the house with no regulators. So, so it's all these cubic feet of gas just pouring into the house.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she was burned over 90-something% of her body, 3rd-degree burns, just a horrific thing to go through. Was in the burn ward for almost 2 years.
Golly.
Lost her arm, lost one arm, half of one arm, lost most of the use of the other arm. Eyelids were burned so bad she couldn't close her eyes. It was just
Awful.
awful.
Yeah.
So she sued the gas company and actually won a settlement. And from that settlement is when she bought the land that our family now still lives on and farms. So I'm the fourth generation that's lived on the farm. My son is the fifth, and now my grandson is the sixth generation of farmer on the Circle H.
And this was part of, your part of the sermon is like what challenging the assumptions, right? Why do bad things happen to good people?
Right.
And some of that stuff that we just can't see why there could ever be a purpose for such an atrocity like this fire accident. I mean, I can't imagine fire ward for 2 years and all that damage and psychological part of living through that. And, but being able to take something like that and turn it into something that's still an ongoing legacy for your family it's a beautiful thing to come from such a terrible thing.
Yeah, it is. It's and as a small kid, I really didn't have an appreciation for it. I knew because my grandmother, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, she was still alive. I think she passed away when I was 10, but I remember working with her on the farm, and I really didn't have an appreciation for what she had been through. Mm-hmm. Really didn't at that time know the story, and it was older. I was older when I learned the story, and I was like, oh my God, this was absolutely horrible. What the gas company did was horrible. What she went through was horrible. I'm sure medical care back then in the late 20s and 30s is nothing like it is today, so I'm sure that was no walk in the park. So all
probably
of that,
spent those 2 years on like just straight morphine.
I don't know how, because that's like one of the most painful injuries to have is burn injury. It's just,
and amputation on top of that.
Yeah, and amputation.
Yeah.
But she still farmed. She raised cotton. She raised sugar cane. She had a syrup mill. Actually, made syrup, and bottled syrup. Actually would grow sugar cane.
Okay.
Cut it. Grind it. Cook it out. And everything.
Y'all still do that?
No, we don't do that any longer. It was a pretty arduous process.
Sounds sticky.
Yeah. There were parts of the meal that was I still remember seeing parts of the meal that were still in place when I was a kid. But no, never had that experience. But she did so much in spite of being disabled. She could hitch a plow to a mule and plow the fields. She was pretty amazing.
Tough.
Yeah, very tough.
Yeah, that is amazing. And like I said, what a legacy, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it just makes me wonder, like, all right, so when, something bad happens, it's God's plan. I may not understand it yet, but also, can we make lemonade from the lemons?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Doesn't do any good to sit around and wish it were better.
No, she definitely made the best out of it, and she knowingly or unknowingly just set up, the rest of her family for success,
Yeah. Now it's like, she created a bit of a golden goose for your family that as long as y'all can, shepherd it well, it'll provide.
Yeah. Because nobody ever has to. You're a descendant of Nora Oliver. You will always have a place to live and a place to work if you want to.
Yeah. And that's
which is huge nowadays.
Huge. Yeah, for sure. One of the questions I like to ask people, and I feel like you'll probably have one, is so like, what's one of the craziest stories you can share with us, either from like Mosaic or your military background? Is there anything you can think of that's just like off the wall crazy?
Oh, yeah, I can think of a few. Let me think of one that's appropriate for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some people will be like, man, I have a good one, but Little Rock's a small town. It's like, I can't edit out enough to where this person won't know it's about them. We get some of that.
Oh, man. Yeah, of course, the military, we all have some great war stories. Probably one of the, it's funny now, it wasn't funny at the time, was when I was flying into Baghdad the first time. I'm on a C-130. We had geared up and left Qatar, which is another country in the Middle East, flying directly into Baghdad. And it's only like an hour flight, roughly. And after about an hour, I was like, we should be landing by now, something, And sure enough, by the time I had that thought pop in my head, the loadmaster who works the back end of the aircraft came back and just started yelling at everybody, gear up, gear up, gear up. We're taking incoming. So we were on final to land in Baghdad, and we started taking incoming fire from insurgents. The airfield that they were shooting at the airplane. They were bombing the airstrip where we were supposed to land at. And so we had been in a hold pattern. We had started on descent, come back up, and we were just in a hold pattern. And they finally said, well, we're just going to land because we're getting low on fuel.
You got to land. Yeah. Right.
And so we all geared up and, put on all of our flak vests, everything.
Yeah.
And there was one guy who was sitting across from me. Instead of putting his helmet on, he put it up under him. And I was like, what are you doing? And I'm yelling at him over the roar of the engines and everything. And he's like, what? I was like, what are you doing? I'm pointing at his helmet up under his bottom. He's like, this is my second time coming into Baghdad. The same thing happened last time, and a guy got shot in the ass.
Oh, no.
I was like, and I thought about it for a second. I'm like, if we're getting shot at, bullets are coming from underneath. So I took my helmet off and sat on my helmet until we landed. Because I did not want to get shot in the rear end. But at the time, I was like, I'm about to die before I even get on the ground. It was just, we were
and
borderline
you're captive
panic.
in a plane. You're just like, Jesus, take the wheel situation.
Exactly.
It makes me think of that. Like, it's like knowledge in that situation is knowing your helmet goes on your head.
Right.
Wisdom is sitting
putting it up
on
under your
helmet.
behind. Yeah.
Because the bullets are coming from the bottom. Man, I've been, this is my second time.
Yeah.
It's like,
so
as a first timer, I'm going to listen to the experienced guy.
Yep. And that happened again when I was in Afghanistan, almost the exact same scenario. And I did the same thing. We're going into a hot landing zone. We're getting fired up on.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I've been here before. Let me take
Everyone
my helmet
sit
off.
on your helmets. Yeah. Did anyone wonder what you were doing?
They did.
And you're like,
they did. I was like, I've lived this before, and I explained to them after we got on the ground, and they were just laughing. They were like, oh, you're so crazy.
Do you ever get on like a commercial flight now and you're just like, there's people that are nervous on a commercial flight and you're just like, it's going to be okay.
Oh, yeah.
I've had to sit on a Kevlar helmet before.
Oh, yeah.
Twice.
Oh, yeah. Just last week when I flew to Orlando, there was a family across from me who they were, I don't know if they probably hadn't flown very much, but they were just so nervous on the takeoff and on the landing, especially. I was just like, oh, it's okay. We hit some turbulence and they were like, that's all right.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not like getting bombed on a runway in Baghdad, like Orlando's a breeze.
There's some scary moments on a commercial airliner, but we don't get shot at very often in commercial airplanes, so thankfully.
Yeah. You can pilots can do a lot once you're getting shot at, it sounds like a different ball game.
Yeah.
Man, that's
I don't know if that's
good.
what you had in mind as far as a story, but that was the one that came to mind.
That is so good. Oh man. And the other question I like to ask people is like, if you could go back in time, let's say you're in college and you're in ROTC and you could give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would be like, Lawrence, just worry about the things that are going to matter next week. Or maybe after that. He said, and then even the things that are going to matter next week, don't worry too much about those. Worry about the things that are, and that's basically to say, don't worry so much, because, if it's not going to matter tomorrow, definitely don't worry about it. Don't spend that energy on it. If it's going to matter next week, maybe it deserves some of your attention. If it's going to matter, longer in the future, then you probably need to be concerned about that, and it just kind of helps me to triage and put things into perspective, because overall it's like, okay, yes, my kid is sick, but they're probably going to get over this cold or whatever it is. I don't have to worry too much, but I really need to, when it concerns their eternal, where they're going to spend eternity, that's what really concerns me. I want them to make sure that they know Jesus, that they accept Jesus and grow in Jesus and love him and be a good person, and so that they can have eternal life. That's what really, really matters, Yeah.
Yeah, because all of the rest of it fades away.
Yeah, exactly.
When the game's over, all the pieces go back in the box.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So that's what I would tell, 18 to 20-year-old Lawrence. Yeah.
You think he would listen?
Probably not, but I'd tell him anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always my thing, is like, I could give myself a lot of advice, but would I listen? Probably not.
No.
Because I've been given a lot of good advice that I didn't listen to.
No, you don't even know what to listen to at that age.
Well, you got it all figured out. Why would you listen to somebody else?
Yeah.
That's just silly.
Yeah.
Man, this is so good. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Learned a little bit more about you today, and I think your story is so interesting. You've got a lot of life left to live, but man, I feel like you've crammed a lot of life in what you've done already.
Yep. It was
some exciting stuff.
It was at 16 years at the Pentagon.
Yeah.
That's my life. Cramming 10 years into 1 year.
Right. Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is so good. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you all for watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify. Be sure to give it a thumbs up, share this video with anybody that may get some value from it. Check out Mosaic Church and all the wonderful things that they're doing there. Mosaic's global network helps churches be more multi-ethnic across the world, and it's an important mission they're doing over there. And be sure to share this information with anybody that needs it. I think I already said that. And we'll see you on the next one. And remember, hustle on purpose. Thanks for watching. If you liked that video as much as we liked making it, be sure to check out another one. You've got one here. You got another one over here. If you want to listen to the podcast audio only, go check out the Spotify link in the description. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It helps us out a ton. And please hit the bell if you want notifications anytime we drop a new video. Hope to see you on the next one.